Hello, this is Yvonne Galusha again. This is the second video on if-else, and I also want to introduce a couple other small things. So you can see here we have some basic business information where a company has various products, and it's just listed here in a table with their product IDs, and then they've sold certain quantities, and the purpose of this little macro is to calculate automatically total sales for that row. So it's going to vary depending on the quantity. And I've just created this little price table, and you can imagine that if you had a macro that did this calculation, then you could easily update prices here and make sure all your macros referred to this table and everything would always be up to date. So let's look at the code for that. If you see here, I'm doing something a little different. I'm basing my for loop on a range. This is something that I have not introduced yet. So what I've done here is I've defined my sales as a range and my product ID out of the price table as a range. Then I have variables defined as a range that I will use to basically go through each of those other two ranges. So remember that a single cell can also be a range. And then these are just local variables used in the calculations. So I'm setting my sales range, hard coding it. We're focusing more on this technique than finding the end. So I just hard coded it as A2 through A19, you can see here. And similarly, I've hard-coded the pricing table product ID from E2 to E10. So you have to use a set, recall, when you're doing this. So when you use ranges like this, then you can just do what's called a for each kind of loop structure. And then I'm using the cell range variable, and I'm saying in my sales range. So in essence, what's going to happen automatically for this for loop that begins here and ends down here on next cell, the for loop's going to keep track of going right down like that. You don't have to keep a counter. You don't have to do any offsets. It's just going to do that because you said process through that range. So as it moves down, I want to take the value out of the cell in which it's located. The first time it's going to be that 102. Then I want to get the value out of the next column. So I do now use the offset 01 to get the quantity, which is right next to it. In this case, the first case, it'll be 20. Now I have an inner nested for each again. This time I'm going to process down because I need to locate the correct product ID in the table. And that's what this for each is doing. It's just now using the product ID range, and I'm using a different range variable that was also defined up here. Again, it's just going to update automatically as it proceeds down to the next product. Now, inside here, getting to our if-else's, you will see I'm using nested ifs because I first have to see, is the product ID that I picked up over here equal to that particular one? So I'm doing a conditional check here. Then if it is, I have to figure out the quantity to know which one of these to pick up. So I'm doing a nested if with some if-else-ifs. So we've talked about this in the last video, quantity less than 20, or it's less than 50, else pick up the last one. That's what this construct's doing. And once you've fallen into a particular if condition, then the whole point of this little inner for loop is to figure out the correct price to use based on the quantity. So I'm doing again an offset because remember my range is here, so I offset in, not on the row, but I offset on the column. So the first time it's 1, the second time it's 2, the next time it's 3. Pulling out that value and putting it in a local variable price. So when it comes out of this for each, it's only going to fall in once because my product ID is always going to be in the price table. Then I'm able to do the actual calculation. Cell offset, this time moving over 2, and doing just simply price times quantity. So let's go ahead and run this and see if my code works. And at least it did not get a runtime error. The thing I suggest is that you always check your work and your logic. So in some situation like this, I would just do some things by hand. So here, let me just pick this one. So we can see here, we want to calculate the total cost for product ID 108 with a quantity of 77. So that's going to put us here, and it's going to have us using the 185. So grab that, and then it needs to be times the quantity. We should get the same value, which we did. You might try another one. So let's do one here equals this quantity, and it's product ID 105, and it's just 10, so it should be times the first one. And that also was correct. So my logic appears to be working. I hope you found this helpful. In summary, let me just mention the advantages for this kind of construct is if that price table grows, if you were doing this correctly, you could have this range not be hard-coded, and so that will easily adjust for that. And also, I just think that this is a little more elegant. You don't have to worry with, keeping track of your I's and J's once you get more used to using this for each construct. I hope you found this to be helpful. Thank you.